What's going on, my fellow A-Plusers? It is I, your host as always, Adam Perez. We're back once again with a brand new episode review for Naomi as we dive into episode number 8. Now, last week we did not have ourselves a brand new episode. It was a little bit of a repeat episode. So we're actually back this week with a new episode of Naomi. So we decided to go ahead and tackle episode number 8 for you guys here today. So you guys know, as always, these are simply just my A-plus opinions. But at the end of the day, I want to know yours. What did you guys think of episode 8 of Naomi? Go ahead and let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below. And I enjoyed this episode here this week for sure. Some really interesting new dynamics to explore. The idea of Dee along with Zumbado having to maybe work together in order for Naomi to train a little bit better, certainly going forward. I continue to love the buildup and the revelations of Naomi as she comes to find out about her parents, maybe possibly having to leave Port Oswego once again, and really get an opportunity to see a little bit more from the supporting character in Lourdes, who I've actually been asking for quite some time, like, where's she been? I feel like we haven't seen her in quite a few episodes. Doesn't seem as recurring or as supportive of a character as some of the others, whether that be Anthony, Nathan, Annabelle, if you will. So it was pretty cool to get the opportunity to see her kind of pop up in this week's episode. But for me, I think that the theme and the overall struggle that we wind up finding for Naomi this week that I appreciated, one, she at least winds up getting a brand new ability in here as her super hearing winds up coming in handy, and maybe listening in on some conversations she probably shouldn't. But this really sets up the dynamic with her family, who is in fact celebrating their 20th anniversary of marriage. Congratulations to her parents. Really awesome daughter to go ahead and fix you up a whole entire feast and meal as breakfast in the morning to celebrate your first meeting, if you will, in the 20th anniversary. So really cool to kind of see Naomi go out of her way and be that type of daughter to her family. But she does pick up on the idea in here that there's a potential that they certainly might have to move once again. And for me, when it comes to Naomi and everything that she's learning about the dangers that are certainly around her, the fact that she's finally learning the drastic measures that maybe her family has had to take in the past in order to kind of keep her safe, there is a level of responsibility that I think we're finding when it comes to Naomi that she feels that she has towards her parents along with her friends, right? Very much early in the beginning of this season, a lot of her friends were jumping on board and helping her out with her investigation, some of the mysteries and questions that she certainly had. But as she dives a little bit further, it does seem as though maybe those big groups, those big group outings aren't happening as much as usual, as it seems as though maybe her circle of trust is maybe shrinking just a little bit in regards to who she can truly tell what she certainly is to people, right? We've got Annabelle that certainly knows her secret. And in this episode, we get the opportunity to see Annabelle's boyfriend and Jacob learn the secret as well. And with so many people learning it, it is one of those situations where I feel like Naomi is very much in that Peter Parker territory, where she's starting to realize that danger could come to anybody that she certainly loves, most importantly the people that actually know who she truly is, right? So her parents, Annabelle, as we get to see her and her parents and Annabelle kind of get into some confrontations in this episode. It's really the idea of Naomi really wanting to put a lot of that responsibility and onus on herself, really blaming her for the fears that have now been associated with people's lives, kind of looking at her parents in the sense that, okay, so the military is creeping up on us a little bit more. They're learning more things, right? They may even be onto Mr. McDuffie sort of thing. But there is a level of responsibility that Naomi kind of fears, like you've had to upheaval sort of your life, or uproot your life, I should say, and continue to have to run with people constantly looking for you or hunting for you, right? The idea of Annabelle possibly sort of being in danger. She puts a lot of that responsibility on her and really doesn't want to see her friends or family put into those kind of situations. Now, what she does about it, we'll definitely see, right? Like, does that mean she runs away from home where nobody knows where she's at? Nobody can answer those questions sort of thing. Maybe maybe in turn keeping some of her friends and family safe. We'll definitely see how Naomi decides to handle it, but she definitely is at least realizing in here that her being around people that she loves is quite dangerous. And I gotta say, you guys have heard me talk very highly about Annabelle, her supporting character, her BFF in this season so far. I really enjoyed sort of the pushback that Annabelle gives Naomi, the idea of Naomi making those tough decisions for her and deciding to not let her be as involved anymore. And this kind of puts a little bit of a wrench into their friendship in this episode, causes a little bit of an argument. But again, one of the reasons why I enjoy Annabelle is she seems very level-headed and very educated and knows how to handle certain situations. The fact that her and Naomi have an argument, but she still attends the party, right? Still makes herself and presence felt, sort of thing. It's like, just because we have an argument doesn't mean that our friendship is over, right? We're always going to have these struggles and these hiccups and whatnot, but we're always going to be that ride or ride sort of duo, you know what I mean? Not quite the ride or die. I mean, clearly Annabelle doesn't seem that doom and gloom, but I definitely understand what she says and the fact that she's always going to be there, right? But Naomi needs to let her be the one to kind of make that decision. And I really love the analogy that Jacob winds up giving to Naomi at the end of this episode, about one of his favorite scenes when it comes to Lord of the Rings being the Samwise Gamgee insisting that he follow Frodo throughout the entirety, right? Frodo tried to do the same thing also, understanding the power and responsibility and wanting to leave the fellowship to protect those people, but Sam, being the good friend that he is in that support system, certainly wanted to be there. So, and that's Annabelle to the T. Annabelle is our Samwise Gamgee when it comes to Naomi, and I absolutely love it in here. So I thought it was pretty eye-opening, at least for the struggles that Naomi was definitely dealing with the idea of her parents possibly wanting to move and be uprooted once again. The idea of Annabelle thinking it was just a nightmare, the idea of Naomi having to leave and their friendship kind of be over. So it's going to be interesting to see how Naomi winds up tackling that. I will say this, in this episode, we do get the opportunity also to kind of find out that there's another alien in Port Oswego that we didn't know anything about. I mean, we knew Dee, we knew Naomi, we knew Zumbado. I believe was it Akira? Is that what her name was? The other female that Zumbado met? I believe she's like in a completely different town and city, so she's not going to pop up on the radar in here. And it does kind of make me wonder, especially with the other alien being at this 20th anniversary party for her parents, it's got to mean, right, that it's somebody that we know already, or that her parents know, or that Naomi knows. If I had to try and take a wild guess and a swing as to who the other alien being could be, there is a part of me that thinks maybe it's Lourdes, and I'm wondering if maybe the pushback, the attitude, the way that she holds herself, the lack of seeing her on the show, her attractiveness to Naomi. I mean, granted, she's probably just attracted to Naomi for her own reasons, but there are some things about Lourdes that I am kind of curious, like, is she an alien? Just because she has kept her life rather private. Now, I know that they've given hints to us in regards to what she's kind of been through, right? Like a high school dropout, I believe, having to stay home and take care of her parents. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong in regards to Lourdes once again, but the fact that we haven't seen very much of her, or that her life is still very much a mystery, and the way that she reacts and responds to people feels a little bit out of touch, if you will. But again, I don't know half the shit that Lourdes has truly been in her life to maybe even warrant her treating people the way that she does. But there is still a big mystery about Lourdes that I am really interested in. So perhaps she's the alien. Who knows? Maybe Annabelle's an alien too, and she has yet to even make that known to Naomi. I have no idea, but those are probably my two guesses right now, with Lourdes maybe being the first. But we'll see. We'll see who it turns out to be, but definitely a fun mystery for us to certainly explore. And the fact here that Jacob becomes a pretty significant character in now learning Naomi's secret identity, as he winds up, I believe, stumbling into a conversation Annabelle and Naomi are having about aliens, and he thinks that they're talking about the rumor mill that's happening since there was an explosion over at Star Labs that we saw in the previous episode with the capturing of Naomi and Zumbado. All of that apparently has made it to Reddit and the rumor mill, if you will, in regards to what's going on, saying that Star Labs was working on some technology to be able to detect aliens. And that's exactly where we get the opportunity to see Jacob and Naomi really work and create this device for them to try and detect aliens also, but not before Naomi is kind of stuck having to save Jacob's life, as Naomi goes to investigate Star Labs by herself, and unbeknownst to her, Jacob winds up joining in and showing up a little bit late before Naomi has to save him from some like falling wreckage, if I'm not mistaken also. So he gets the opportunity to see her super strength on full display. Again, really harboring no Superman abilities and even some additional ones as well. And so even though we got to hear the super hearing utilized in here also, Zumbado, at least in this episode, also clarifies for us what her abilities of levitation are kind of called. Right now, I believe he calls it weight augmentation, if I'm not mistaken. The idea that she maybe has the ability to float. It seems as though she can float right now with the potential of being able to fly, and it seems as though that might certainly be a next step that will eventually unravel itself if Dee and Zumbado can kind of figure out some way in how to train her properly. And that's one of the other aspects of this episode I wanted to certainly discuss with Dee and Zumbado really clashing and bumping some heads in here in regards to what's the true and better method in order to go ahead and train Naomi. Dee being very much more spiritual, if you will, very much more hand-to-hand combat, weapon training and things like that. So he's definitely taking his own path in training Naomi. But I found it interesting that Zumbado kind of just invited himself along in this episode and kind of really pushing Dee in the manner in which he's training her. The idea of thinking that, her training needs to be accelerated, needs to be pushed a little bit more. She needs to be able to be focusing on actually using her abilities and not using them, sort of thing. So these two characters definitely have a different ideology in regards to what's the proper way of training Naomi. But I really appreciate the fact that despite their differences and despite the back and forth all episode long, they at least do manage to realize this is really going to take a great balance between the both of us, right? I think some really eye-opening points of view were certainly brought to attention. Like for me, I appreciated the fact that Zumbado seemingly respects Dee's method of training, but feels like maybe in this instance, with everything kind of closing in around them very quickly, Zumbado, while appreciative of what Dee is doing, thinks that they could be doing more and faster, sort of thing. And I love the fact of Zumbado wanting to meet Dee sort of hand to hand on the battlefield, if you will, just the two of them, to really express his concern in the sense that, look, your training is excellent. You're more than capable of taking care of yourself when you gotta face your opponent, but that's very much sort of in the rules of battle. But when you're dealing with somebody else that don't care about no rules, you know what I mean, you got to be able to think on your feet. And we clearly see in here Dee struggling against Zumbado when the rules are broken, right? Not being able to really reorganize yourself and come up with another game plan of attack or defense, sort of thing. And we get to see Dee rather frustrated. But again, it's a great perspective and point for Dee to realize that while I am training her the way that she needs to be, maybe there is more that we can do. And the fact of them deciding to work together to showcase the best sides of them towards Naomi and her training, I think is going to go a really, really long way. But, you know, Dee makes up some really good points. Like, I get the pushback that he has against Zumbado, that when you have somebody, especially with the abilities and the power that Naomi is certainly showcasing, the idea of maybe pushing her too hard, her being in her emotions, all of that stuff can really play a very pivotal role in regards to really not only if Naomi wins or succeeds, but really who I think she could possibly become as a person if a lot of those emotions and powers are sort of left untapped and not properly trained. So I think we had some really great perspectives in here, and pretty cool to be able to see Dee and Zumbado actually on the same page. Maybe that's why I should refer to them as Z. Good old Z. Quick honorable mentions in here. I do want to go ahead and bring up, shout out to Groucho Barks, Jacob's dog. For those of you who don't know, I believe that's a play off of Groucho Marx, old comedian back, I don't even know, back in like the black and white times. There used to be it was Groucho Marx and I believe two other comedians. It was the Marx Brothers, I believe is what they refer to them as in film. But one of their movies I used to watch as a kid growing up, it was in black and white. It was called Duck Soup. But Groucho Marx always had the really thick eyebrows like myself, the glasses, thick mustache, and he would smoke this gigantic cigar also. You can probably Google image him if you want to, Groucho Marx, but the fact that Jacob called his dog Groucho Barks, I actually found rather hilarious, honestly. And what was up with all the Lord of the Rings references in this episode, and especially all the the disses and the sly remarks towards Lord of the Rings? Not everybody being a fan. I think Naomi said she wasn't a fan of Lord of the Rings. Lourdes didn't want anything to do with it and made her point rather clear. I was pretty much like Jacob, like, you guys got to stop talking about Lord of the Rings like this. You're hurting my feelings, guys. Like, this stuff really hurts. But I thought it was interesting that we had so many references. They used the term fellowship in here. We had a Samwise Gamgee reference. We saw Jacob dressed up as Gandalf or like some sort of wizard or king, I believe he was, answering trivia questions and stuff. Anthony's hyped because they got their like Lord of the Rings shirts created and made for the Stump the King trivia night. I thought it was just really great. And I am a big fan of the Lord of the Rings deluxe editions, by the way. I not only had the DVDs, the Blu-rays, but I also wind up getting the deluxe editions, which I believe was the expanded editions, like extra 30 minutes or 45 minutes or something like that. Like, these movies were like 3+ hours long. I absolutely loved it, but the deluxe edition is definitely the way to go. But I just found it interesting that there were so many Lord of the Rings references in here. And then last but not least, the idea of Lourdes and her comic book store. How can you have a comic book store and not like Lord of the Rings, man? The fact that she's like, it's not even comic book related. Like, granted, I know Lord of the Rings isn't a comic book, but it definitely falls into line with like that fantastical sort of fantastical sort of genre, you know what I mean? So while a novel and not a comic book, there definitely are plenty of connections for Lord of the Rings to even be in a comic book store in the first place. So the fact that she feels that way about Lord of the Rings, along with the idea that she wants to put all the Future State and Joker stuff under the B category for Batman, I'm thinking to myself, no wonder your comic book store is going under, man. Like, you can't even organize your comic books right. There's no way you put J for Joker under B for Batman because it's part of the Batman family books. Like, there's no way. Like, I can see why Lourdes is definitely struggling when it comes to comic books. But I thought it was cool that she even had a comic book store of her own. The point of her selling her own collection to kind of keep her business afloat. We get to see Anthony and Nathan doing their part to try and fundraise some money to kind of keep her comic book store open so she doesn't have to sell her comic books and things like that. Anthony and Nathan are really great in regards to putting them together despite the differences that they might have had, and really coming together to help other people. They make a very sort of attentive duo to other people's feelings and needs, especially if you're a close friend of them. So shout out to them to coming up with the fantastic ideas in here. But Lourdes is very much that loner, and it seems like it definitely takes her a while to kind of warm up to people, as she clearly didn't value Nathan and Anthony's help in here. Didn't even refer to them sort of as friends, thinking that, hey, we're only friends by association when it comes to Naomi. Like, if we didn't know Naomi, you probably wouldn't even bother talking to me or trying to reach out to me, sort of thing, right? So I did find that rather interesting, but we'll see. Like, there's plenty of more, but like when it comes to Lourdes, I want to know more about her. I truly do. I am fascinated by her, her relationship with Naomi. The fact that she's a comic book store owner definitely grabbed my attention for sure. And I really want to see her start becoming a little bit more into the fold. I think it definitely hurts her that she's not going to school, so she's not around all these characters all the time. But I would like to see her a little bit more involved in this season. But overall, guys, really enjoyable one. I really love the dynamic and the situation we find Naomi in, struggling, very fearful for the people around her and things like that. The discovery of a brand new alien certainly in the city. Who could it possibly be? Some great mysteries, some great storytelling, and some great character work so far from this season, guys. But listen, if there's anything that I missed that you guys want to further talk about, whether that be character moments, storyline details, Easter eggs, definitely go ahead and let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below after this particular video airs, and we'll definitely see you next time. But until then, guys, do me a big favor, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.